Right.
Okay, I think we're live.
Hey everyone. We are going to give just a couple of minutes for stragglers to log on. Please let us know in the comments if you are having any issues with the stream. Hopefully, if you're here,
Yes.
that means you're already good to go. Grab your snacks, go to the bathroom, whatever you need to do in the next couple of minutes, and we'll get started in a minute or two.
Yeah. Let's see if everyone can slowly trickle in. I mean, it's more of a relaxed space, so you can come and join how they go.
People feel free to come and go throughout the live stream as well.
Yeah, I think it's going to be about an hour and a half-ish, depending on the number of questions we get. We'll see. The morning session was, I think, about an hour and 20 minutes.
Mhm.
So I expect there to be more Europeans in this call than in the morning
Those are
session.
your people.
My people, yes.
Those are your people.
Again, we're in the Camera 325 office in
Thanks,
Seoul.
camera.
So, another shout out to Camera for giving us access to this space. We've got a pretty nice view here.
Mhm. Nice view, Seoul Tower. It's a little bit cloudy, overcast today, but still really, really freaking hot and humid.
Yeah, the
Seoul
Korean
in the
weather is
summertime.
definitely killing us.
So,
Um,
should we get started?
yeah, I think people are slowly joining. So, yeah, we can just start, I guess.
All right.
Maybe some personal introduction first.
Personal introduction. Actually, let's introduce each other this time.
Oh.
To make it interesting.
You can start.
Okay, this is Bastiaan Flikweert. He is also known as Seo Vin. He is the person that you have seen in several of the other Q&A sessions, live sessions with NCRC, really holding them accountable, asking all the difficult questions. Also, in the meantime, he's been translating between people and personalities and languages all at the same time. And he's one of the co-founders of EARS. And as part of that advocacy, he has also recently finished a master's degree in history. Yeah. So, jack of all trades here. I don't know when he sleeps or if he sleeps, but he can probably tell you more about that a little bit later.
Yeah, I definitely feel like I've aged about 5 years in a single year.
Yeah.
To be honest about that.
So that is Bastiaan.
Yeah. Important detail.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not an adoptee.
Yes.
Both of my parents, they were adopted to the Netherlands back in the 70s. So I was born in the Netherlands. And we moved to Korea when I was young, back and forth. So that's how I also learned Korean and became fluent in Korean. This is Mary. Mary is an adoptee herself. She was adopted to the U.S., to Colorado, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, same place as South Park is located, if you like that cartoon.
Yeah, so she grew up definitely not in the city.
No.
And her Korean name is Jung Na-young. She's now back in Korea. She's teaching English to some corporate officials, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not to any normal students. That's what I understood. But by training, you're actually an architect.
Yes.
Right. So Mary has been very important for. She's a co-founder of EARS, and within EARS, Mary's role has definitely been very important as we're trying to hold the NCRC accountable for whether they abide by all the building codes, whether the temporary archive is actually.
I haven't.
Whether the temporary archive, actually is equipped to store the records of the 250,000 adoptees that were sent abroad. Am I missing any details about you?
Details about me? Not so much. I returned to Seoul about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Innocently thought that I would just do birth search while I was here. And it seems like every day is a new surprise, a new discovery, and including all of these very new, exciting things we've been learning about NCRC. For those of you who might be joining for the first time to Adoptee Advocacy or Adoptee Spaces, thank you for being here. NCRC is the National Center for the Rights of the Child. They're a body here in Korea that has been tasked with taking over records responsibility and post-adoption services that had previously been overseen by 4 private adoption agencies. So Holt, Eastern, KSS, and SWS. So we'll get into a little bit of that history. We'll kind of hand this over to the historian to tell you a little bit more about that context.
Yeah, a little bit about, I guess, the structure of the stream. We'll give a brief introduction, and then we can just straight up jump into the questions you guys have. So feel free to put them in the chat. One of our other EARS core members, Eva, is here. She's looking in the chat and delivering the questions to us as well. So feel free to post them there. Our 2 other co-founders are currently in the U.S., Omyo Kim and Jelaine Lee. So they are hopefully asleep right
sleeping.
now. So yeah, just a quick shout out to them as well. Yeah, to just straight up jump into, I guess, a little bit, how did we get here systemically, right? So
I ask myself that question every day.
The Korean government decided to ratify the Hague Convention on Adoption, and to ratify that convention, they needed to change their adoption law. So that process started 2022, and by the summer of 2023, a new adoption law in Korea was signed. And to abide by the Hague Convention, the Korean government had to become more responsible and take up all the responsibilities previously done by the private adoption agencies, with the idea being that if the government takes on the responsibility, they can actually guarantee and protect the basic human rights in the international adoption process. Now, there are a lot of problems with the Hague Convention itself in actually whether it is capable of actually protecting those rights. But what was important for adoptees is that, at least in terms of records and access to your origins, the new laws in Korea were supposed to or are strengthening those rights, because while previously all the adoption for major adoption agencies, so KWS or /SWS, depends on what time you were adopted from them, KSS, Holt, and ESWS, so Eastern Social Welfare Services, those 4 agencies, all their records would become managed by the government. And, or well, at least the government is supposed to be responsible for the management of those records. Now, the way the Korean government interpreted that and put it into law is stating that all the adoption-related records from the private agencies, the child facilities, so that's orphanages and other related facilities, and the municipalities, have to be transferred to the NCRC. Now, that means that the NCRC has become the sole institute in Korea responsible for the management and the care for all the adoption-related documents. Now, when it was decided initially in the summer of 2023, I think, regardless of whether we agree on Korea signing onto the Hague Adoption Convention, taking away the power of the adoption agencies that they have over the adoptees by them managing actually are documents with all the information we need to know ourselves, to know our past, but also we need those documents to prove sometimes in court or for administrative purposes. Um, and we're subject to their, um, I guess, sometimes they give you documents, sometimes they don't, sometimes they ghost you, sometimes you get new documents you hadn't seen before. Um, a government cannot do that
Mhm.
because a government, I mean, I suppose a government normally has to have a set process, and at least you can hold them accountable because there are laws that they have to abide by. Because the private adoption agencies were never subject to a law in that management. Um, Yeah, I see that someone correctly commented that Korea signed into The Hague in 2013. I was specifically talking about the ratification. So it is correct that Korea signed the Hague Adoption Convention in 2013, but they never followed through with the actual necessary legislative changes in Korea for them to actually ratify the treaty. So that's kind of what the process started in 2022.
So
So
where are we today?
yeah, now fast forward 2 years, we were hopeful. Finally, we can expect, a common process for everyone to get access to the records by 2025. We're in 2025, and the new law went into effect on July 19th. Now, where are the records going?
So if you imagine, well, you can even get a visual right now. Active activity. If you have your laptop sitting on your kitchen table, you can take a trip over to your freezer, open the door, take a look inside, feel that cold breeze on your face, and now expand that imagination of yours to visualize that as an entire room full of adoption records. That is not too far off from where these records are going to be moving or are currently in transit now. We're still waiting for some confirmation and definitive answers on that from NCRC. But they have found a temporary facility for the next 5 years that was designed initially as a commercial refrigeration site for something like Coupang or Amazon. So obviously, that is not ideal for something that is as sensitive as 50-year-old records in some cases. Because the facility doesn't have the proper climate controls, humidity controls. They are adding some of this equipment retroactively, but the systems are undersized because of some of their budget restraints and also failure to engage with the proper experts as part of the development of that move. We're also looking at fire suppression systems, safety codes, disability access. All of these things have some serious concerns around them. And because of that, EARS is concerned about risk of deterioration or long-term loss of the precious files that relate so closely to the adoptees and our lives. So what we're asking for right now with NCRC is accountability and that they actually hold to the building codes, the laws, and also the human rights standards, both domestically and in international standards as well.
Yes, I think part of the problem here has been the lack of communication from the NCRC as well, and the lack of communication. Initially, we thought if we would just ask them, we can get the answers, and then it's a lot of can be cleared up. But it actually, the more we started to ask, the less we knew, simply because we figured out that they also don't know what they're doing, because they're, yeah, like you said, they're not talking to the necessary experts to know what they're doing. So there is, due to that, a real risk of deterioration of the records once they are stored for too long in the temporary facility. And that relates, again, why I'm highlighting that is because they don't have any clear long-term plans right now. So they're saying, yeah, this is temporary facility without having any clear roadmap for a permanent facility. Um, and on top of that, there's also a real risk that files might be lost during the transfer process. And we've asked them multiple times, can we get experts? Can we get individual, independent experts to monitor that process? Um, and up until now, we haven't really had any success. Um, but hopefully, by next week, we will get more of a clear answer on that from the ministry. Um, but maybe we should explain a little about who we are as an organization, how we came to actually try to push
Yeah.
the ministry.
Yeah, I think so. We get this question quite frequently. How do you know each other? Who are these random people who are now behind ears? We started out as a group of friends, just going to dinner together. And so obviously as adoptees, like adoption does come up as an issue in a lot of the conversations, but I mean, we really were, kind of sitting over dinner one night and we kind of came up, we were aware that these issues around NCRC had come up. And so we started talking to each other about, well, do you know if anybody's doing anything? Somebody should really do something. We should hold people accountable. Like, who's holding NCRC accountable? So we started asking around people we knew, people maybe and we realized, well, there's not really anybody doing that. So we looked at each other and said, I guess that means it's us. So the last 3 months or so, we've been scrambling, we've been learning, we've been getting feedback from all of you. Also hoping to find some of those experts and allies who NCRC we hope will consult with in the very near future.
Yeah.
And that is how we came to be. And so even though we started as a small group of friends, we're now also looking to the adoptee community, biological parents, adopted families, to build a coalition of community-led response and oversight to hold NCRC accountable for transparent.
Yeah, I think the goals I think when we started, we said that we wanted to verify that all the records are transferred safely and securely in a transparent manner, that's communicated well to the adoptee community about what is going on with your files and your information, regardless of whether that is being transferred to an unsafe location. The second goal that we try to hold ourselves is that we try to observe and report any problems that we see emerge in that process and report it back to the community, as well to the experts, and as well to Korean society to garner the public support necessary to hold the government accountable. And again, that accountability, we also try to convince the NCRC and the ministry that they are indeed, in fact, accountable to both adoptees and stakeholders, and also their own laws and the Korean regulations. And throughout all of that, I think, and that's our last main goal, is that we elevate adoptee voices so that we are heard and that we are respected here in Korean society.
Yeah, and I think Michelle in the comments has a really great question. She's asking, why didn't NCRC bring in the proper experts? And is there any other reason that they might not be responding to or answering the questions and concerns that adoptees are raising through this process? And honestly, from what I've observed in all of our correspondence with NCRC, some of the interactions we've had through email or in forums, Q&A sessions with them, it's because they don't know. And also they are rather understaffed themselves. But I don't think that's necessarily an excuse because they have not acknowledged that they don't know what they don't know. So they're not asking for help from experts themselves. So I think that is actually the biggest piece of why they're not really responding is because, in my opinion, if they had the information to give, at this point they're frustrated too. I think they would share information if they had it.
Yeah. I think it's also. I think initially the higher ups at the ministry did not think of this as a very complex task. They said, "Oh yeah, it's just some files." And then again, it's a particular mindset. It's the lack of their ability to really understand what it means for adoptees, what those files mean and represent, um, and that is because they did not take um, the time and energy to listen really to us, the community, to the adoptees. And yes, right now the comment correctly points out that this has been the issue. I mean, it says for the past 13 years. I'm going to say since forever, because the original sin for all the adoptions and for allowing adoption, the system to exist that has permitted it, created it, and expanded it, that has always been the Ministry of Health and Welfare. And now they are becoming responsible again for the records that represent that. And it's hard to tell them that to them, it's an annoying past that they are confronted with. But for the adoptees, it represents their lives to the core. Um, and that's why we founded ears to bring that to their attention, because we noticed that requires a little bit of a push. A single email is not going to get them to understand that, unfortunately.
And we have had some positive interactions with some of the employees at NCRC, kind of the day-to-day operations people, but the real decision makers who are in charge of policy, who are in charge of programs and directing employees in their daily work, the attitude is just not helpful. And so I think we should acknowledge we do have a small number of allies within NCRC, but it really is their leadership that we're looking to create and respond to some of these requests and demands that we are asking for.
Yeah. So yeah, we like you said, we've been busy for about now 3.5 months.
Is that all?
Yeah, it's been a lot.
Yeah, let's give the rundown of some of the things that we've been doing. So I think the first time people really were introduced to EARS as an organization was on July 7th. We had a forum with the National Assembly. It was co-hosted by about half a dozen MPs, so we were happy to have their support with us. And that is the first time that we were really able to present the case that, hey, we really do need to take a look at how these records are being viewed as cultural assets, or I guess the failure to recognize them as cultural heritage and human rights identity establishing documents. And it was also one of the first times we were able to present some of our concerns around the temporary storage facility and lack of planning for a permanent home for all of these records. Followed by that, or in conjunction with that, we also filed a Human Rights Commission petition because access to your documents as an adoptee is a right that you have. It is codified by regulation that that is something that we are always supposed to have access to. However, there's been a 3-month suspension of that access to the records. And so that is why we filed a petition with the Human Rights Commission. And we also wrote a letter to the President and the Ministry of Health and Welfare to make them aware of these issues too. And when I say President, that is not President of NCRC or any of the private adoption agencies. That is President of Korea, President Lee.
Yeah.
And Bastiaan can talk a little bit more about that effort. So many of you were also part of that. We really, really appreciate your support, your signatures, your voices.
So we were able to get an appointment with one of the secretaries of President Lee. What definitely helped is the fact that we had 29 overseas adoptee groups sign on, representing 14 different countries. So most major groups from most countries, I think all countries actually signed on to the letter, and we were able to talk to the secretary. And yeah, we also delivered that letter to the Minister of Health and Welfare, and that actually has led to the officials inside the ministry to acknowledge our presence, and actually now they are organizing some kind of what is it, a discussion group where we have been invited to voice our concerns. Now we are of course trying to get them to then also do something with those concerns, but the first meeting will be next week, so we will report right back to you the progress on whether their stance has actually changed or whether it will be more of a symbolic talking group. But of course, we will try to push them to actually do something with the concerns that we raise. And yeah, it really took a lot to them to acknowledge their own mistakes and the gaps in this process. Initially, they invited all the journalists to show the temporary facility while they were not reacting to us. They were not replying to our contact or to our emails.
So we protested.
Yeah, so we organized a protest.
Yes. So some of you joining today online may have also joined us at those protests at the temporary facility to bring media attention to the issues, and as a result of that, public awareness, which we do seem to be getting public support behind us in our efforts now. But even though we had protesters with ears and adoptee representatives and advocates behind us, NCRC and Ministry of Health and Welfare themselves still did not invite us to visit the facility.
Yeah, we were flat out ignored that day.
Yeah.
And we actually had to request through one of the offices of a member of the National Assembly to send out an official request to visit the facility. And that's how we first got to see the facility and voice our concerns to the officials of the Ministry of Health and Welfare and the NCRC. Yeah, that was rough, that meeting. They denied a lot of, they flat out denied some of our points.
So the site visit itself, when we were finally able to get inside and take a closer look at the conditions there, some of the questions that we raised were in relation to accessibility, which is a huge issue. The walkway from the bus station to the temporary storage site is very narrow. The ground is uneven. The pavers are loose. It's not safe for somebody who has mobility issues, even somebody who is not impaired. In the winter time, if there's ice and snow, it could be dangerous. The other thing we noticed is that there is no restroom access for somebody who has a wheelchair. Even though they might be able to get inside the bathroom area, they cannot use the toilet or the stall. There's just not enough space for them to do that. And there's also no tactile infrastructure within the building for somebody with visual impairment. So no tactile flooring, no braille. And also we noticed that the consultation room doesn't appear to have privacy or sound attenuation for some of the sound related concerns. So that's the accessibility piece. And then there's also a safety piece because the facility was originally designed as storage for refrigerated goods. It is not necessarily up to building code as far as an office space or an archive, which technically, I guess there's not a categorization, it'd be closest to office space. So that changes the fire exit requirements, some of the fire protection systems like sprinklers or extinguishers. And so we are working with the city of Goyong to try and get an independent building inspector to review and ensure that the storage facility is compliant with those safety and access codes.
And yes, we also we were able to host a press conference again with the help from MP Soyoung-sok in the National Assembly from a coalition of Korean archivists and representative organizations who, when we explained and they reviewed what our materials, they all acknowledged, yeah, this is not adequate for storing any form of archival material on the short or long term. And all that combined has definitely put up the pressure on the ministry and on the NCRC to address these issues now. Unfortunately, the NCRC requested, they say that they feel sorry, but that they need 3 months to complete the transfer process and that they therefore cannot provide any access to adoption records for 3 months. Now, we, again, as said previously, we think that is unacceptable, and that's why we've submitted a petition to the Human Rights Commission that 3 months is too long, and that if they had prepared well, that they could have done it quicker and in a more organized manner, or at least communicated it better to us. Now, unfortunately, in delving into this matter and actually asking them questions and talking to them, I'm afraid it will be longer than 3 months, because we found out that while they are already currently moving the adoption records from KSS, KWS, and Eastern, the hold records are not even all fully categorized. So they are still working in the archive of hold right now in figuring out what documents there are. Well, not what documents there are, how many folders there are. And they say they will have that finished by December. Now, that was from the schedule they released early July, but they're already behind on that schedule. So we are afraid that even though some kind of servers might reopen on September 16, that if you are from hold and you actually request access, that they might say, oh yeah, sorry, we don't have that yet. You have to wait until January, which it's such a blatant violation of your right to your own records.
It's frustrating too, because the alternatives right now, because of poor planning, because of the lack of engagement with the adoptee community, with subject matter experts, there aren't a lot of alternatives right now. But that doesn't mean that there weren't other alternatives available previously. So the NCRC did a feasibility study that included dozens of other sites and other possibilities. What we're told about why those sites were not selected is because NCRC was not responsive to those requirements in the correct timeframes. So good options, good alternatives went away. So in terms of this question from Instagram, it looks like the question is there a possibility to propose another storage room? There was. NCRC is planning to do another feasibility study, which we have questions about duplicating the efforts and some of the funding requirements on that. But in the short term, it's not looking especially promising. So right now, I think our best hope is getting the temporary facility up to compliance, so that way there's not, imminent deterioration of the records. And while that is happening, our concurrent effort will be on making sure that they do get a permanent facility started, in terms of the planning, the funds, and everything else that would be required to make that happen.
Yeah. So as a response to us raising concerns and mobilizing the media in Korea to report on this issue, we were able to have the NCRC actually host a public forum for adoptees on, I think it was the 13th. Now, a lot of you guys were there. I think we were able to get them to host two sessions, one for the American time and one for the European time. I think in total we had about 250 adoptees spread out over the two sessions join. And again, if you were present there, I'm so sorry you had to sit through that. If you were not, I must say that all of the questions we asked, we did not receive proper answers. They were gaslighting, they were either denying responsibility, or they were outright lying about what the reason was, for example, for the delay, or what the reason was why they did not pursue certain plans. And often here the argument from them is that it's due to a lack of funding, that they did not get the budget from the government. But we know from internal documentation, and we know from our own investigation, that they did not follow the proper procedure to actually get the budget necessary. They say, oh yeah, we don't have enough staff members due to a lack of budget. No, it turns out they did not actually request an increase in staff members for the post-adoption service department. So that's all part of the accountability effort also. Yes, there is part of trying to solve the issues at hand, but simply due to practical reality, we are not able to get them to move all the files in time for September 16th without compromising safety. So unfortunately, we have to accept that not all files will be ready on September 16th to be there in the temporary archive for the NCRC to be able to actually provide services to all the adoptees. So in response, the best we can do is, again, hold them accountable for that mistake, and for all those delays, and thereby violating our rights in that process. I think there's a question about the National Archive.
Yeah. Does it include the National Archive? So this effort is separate than the National Archive. Our documents are not going to be stored at the National Archive. However, we do have allies from the National Archive who have been supporting our efforts, asking for compliance in terms of archival standards, international standards, domestic standards, on correct sanitization, proper training and procedures in terms of moving these documents, proper inventory, metadata, humidity conditions, temperature conditions, all of the things that they are typically used to seeing in their realm of expertise. They've been really, really valuable as allies in this effort. But no, this is not part of the National Archives.
And I think one of the comment points out correctly that the National Archive continue to refuse to take the files because they do not want to service them. And that is correct. The National Archive does not want to take on that responsibility because they have determined by their own internal discussion that they do not have the space, nor the funding, nor the expertise from their perspective to actually, yes, they could house them, but they wouldn't be able to service them to the adoptees. Also, I think it's a little bit of a deflection of responsibility. They do not want that responsibility because that means that if anything goes wrong, that's on them. And the law does not stipulate that they have to take on that responsibility. So then they're like, well, then it's not on us. And that's why, yes, the NCRC has to do it. And they are talking to the National Archive and their experts on what procedures to follow. But yeah, that has been a little bit of a wobbly process, and we're trying to, we've asked them multiple times to show us the evidence that they have actually communicated with the National Archive and the experts.
We do have another question from Let's Talk Shop that I think kind of transitions into this next segment of our live stream. You're asking, are they or have they moved any of the files into this facility that's on pause or part of this transfer? We have not yet received a clear answer. So we were told that the documents were going to start the transfer process this past week. We have not seen a clear schedule or plan as to which files are moving when.
Well, to clarify, we did receive some scheduling because we had one of the NP offices request that documentation because they have the authority to get government institute
but to
records.
Be clear, it was not from NCRC.
Not the NCRC. They did not reply to us. Now, we do know that they are not following their own timeline. And from our own investigation, we actually heard about yesterday that they are right now slowly moving the files to the facility. So they are currently in the transfer process, and they will, it's not on pause. And we've tried to establish the monitoring body or the some kind of a working meetings with the ministry before they started moving. And despite our greatest efforts for the past 3 months to push them to actually invite us, that will only be by next week. And we will raise that issue with them like we have before, that it's ridiculous that they want to discuss any issue with the transfer process while they have already started and proceeded with the transfer process.
We are asking for external audits as well, so that way there are third parties who are not directly affected by the file transfer who can validate that yes, this is a process that is included that is occurring in accordance with the requirements. So we are continuing to push for that as well. The next logical question that we receive really frequently is like, okay, well, if they're moving the files, what are the files that they're moving? So adoption records include anything that's related to intake to the adoption agency, your identity documents, your registration documents. A lot of times people think of that as your adoption record, and that is correct. What people don't often think of or always think of, especially outside of the adoptee community, is that it also includes personal items like letters, photographs, even baby clothes or toys. And so those are also being included in the transfer.
Yes. So the full transfer, um, we got them to actually push for getting all of those files as well, and also all of the physical artifacts. Now, there was initially the concern that those would not be included in the transfer, that the only thing they would transfer are those legal documents they made for the adoption process. And that is a consequence of the law being kind of vague in adoption related records and the words they used in the law to define what had to be moved. It was actually left very vague. Now, apparently, that was intentional because the NCRC doesn't know what there exists. They don't know what exactly
And
is made because no one has investigated before
and the
what it
reason,
means.
the reason NCRC isn't really aware of what's included themselves, even though they're giving us all these assurances, yeah, we're moving everything, is that they are cataloging the folders, not the contents of the folders.
Yeah, so before they start moving, they need to catalog what is there, what are they actually moving, and we've asked them, okay, so are you tracking all the files? And they're like, no, we're tracking all the folders. And like, okay, do you know what's in the folders? No, that's too much paperwork.
No idea.
We cannot do that. That's too much. But we're tracking all the folders. And we've asked them, but how can you make sure that all the files are going to move if you don't know what's in the folders? And they said, well, you just got to trust us.
So we know that this is probably really stressful to hear. And we have the same concerns that you do. Obviously, I get the, in my throat and my head. But practically speaking, the volume of folders that is being transferred over is a lot. It's substantial. So
it's about 260,000 folders.
Yeah. So the odds of somebody having the time to take things out from folders is pretty low.
We've talked to subject matter experts here in Korea. We talked to former social workers, and they've all said, we've talked to archivists, and they've all said, if they wanted to do that, they would have already done that before. If they wanted to take out information, if they wanted to take files, they would have done that before. Not on a mass scale, without people finding out. Because the sheer number of adoption folders there, if they want to take out a particular section or want to do not include a particular kind of file in the transfer process, they would have needed to do that all in 2023. And 260,000 folders, that's a lot of paper to dispose of without being caught. And as we've seen already in the adoption information requests since the law changed in 2023, it does not seem that they have systemically, or that the agencies have systemically tampered with the content of the folders. Now, what we are concerned about in terms of is that included in the transfer or not, is administrative documents that are not part of those folders to begin with. So think of lists of names of someone, think of lists of matching lists, for example, for switched cases. Think of film rolls. And yes, also that all the photos and letters that are stored, most of the times those are stored separately, that they are also transferred. Now we've received mixed answers from the archivists and the NCRC and those in the NCRC responsible for the transfer process, whether all of that is also included in the move. Now, we have heard that it's absolutely sure that all the letters and photos and all of the artifacts, physical artifacts, are going to be moved. and that it was miscommunication that led to this confusion, because they will try to, if the adoptee requests, give those items to the adoptee to take home with them. Now, that means that it cannot be classified legally as a public record, because public records that are defined by law, they're owned by the government, and you cannot transfer currently under Korean regulation. Documents or artifacts under government management cannot be transferred in, in possession to
private
private individuals. So they will not include that in the official record keeping, so that they can actually give it back to the adoptees. In terms of the administrative documents, the name lists, they say that they are including all the necessary documents to make sure that they can identify folders and what folder belongs to whom. But when asked, okay, so what does that then actually mean? What type of files are you moving? They were not able to clearly answer us. So we will try to keep pushing them to get clearer answers. And if they do not know, try to inform them what they are exactly missing in that transfer process.
Yeah. So it looks like we have a couple of questions coming in on the Q&A. I think, let's see, curious.
So that means we need to contact the NCRC and the adoption agency to view the complete file, including possible letters and physical stuff.
So one of the frequent questions that I'm seeing, there's a little bit of a theme to some of the questions coming in. How can I get my adoption file, right? And when will I be able to get my adoption file, whether that's adoption records about the adoption itself, physical stuff, or artifacts. So right now there is that 3-month pause. We have been told that that will end on September 16th, but as we've already mentioned, they are already behind on their own schedule of transferring the documents. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that deadline or that resuming of the records request process being delayed even further. But we're assuming that when that process resumes, that you'll submit your request online as you've been able to do previously. We have also been hearing from lots of adoptees who have had issues with the website. Their requests get lost. They don't receive a response. Their response goes to the wrong party. There's all kinds of issues with that. So we're addressing that with NCRC as well, but they've not yet given any indication on how they're going to fix that.
Yeah, so about the website, they say that they're looking into it right now, or that they will look into it right now, and that by January 2026 that they hope to have a new website that will not have those same issues. Now, I've told them, so we have to submit then requests to your broken website that you know is broken from September 16th till January, and they say, unfortunately, yes, because it takes time to fix the website. So yeah, we will continue to try to push them to be quicker with getting the infrastructure ready to actually request your file from the NCRC. So there are different layers here again to what we need to hold the NCRC accountable on. And unfortunately, yes, from here on, it's a waiting game for a lot of you guys who are overseas.
I think there's an excellent question in the chat about accountability and responsibility. So to be clear, your rights are your rights. They are codified. They are in the laws. They are in the regulations. Your rights do not change regardless of what NCRC chooses to do. And that's part of the challenge, is that they are required to adhere to these regulations. If they don't adhere to the regulations, then the question becomes, how is that enforced? And we haven't seen this before. This is history-making stuff, right? So we have no idea whether or not there is will to actually enforce and hold them accountable in terms of the government itself or any kind of action that can be taken. So we're learning in real time.
I mean, practically, the NCRC is under the management of the Ministry of Health and Welfare, and the Ministry of Health and Welfare is, again, practically under the responsibility of both the National Assembly and the government. So there are layers, again, to how far we can go as well. And in the end, also, if they violate any laws, we can go to the courts. Now, of course, we hope that we do not have to go that far, because, again, that costs too much time. And this is a very urgent matter. And some issues can be resolved rather quickly. They do not require much time or action in terms of scope from the ministry or the NCRC. If they would actually have the willpower to listen to our concerns and act upon them. So yeah, we will try to continue to push them without having to constantly go to higher levels. Though we are also continuously keeping those doors open if necessary. So again, that's also why we submitted the letter to the president, and why we're also in communication with the ministry, why we're in touch with lawyers here in Korea, why we submitted the case with the Human Rights Commission. I mean, in the end, Korea is a thriving democracy where there are different mechanisms available for civil society to use those to hold the government accountable. I think practically what's difficult is, first and foremost, the language barrier, second, the cultural barrier, and third, the lack of experience. So yes, there is, everything has to be translated. And even if it's translated, there's still a different cultural understanding of what's possible, what's not possible. And that's also an experience issue. I think I have a pretty good grasp upon what's possible in Dutch society. What can I expect from a Dutch public official or Dutch government, and how they would respond in what timely matter. In Korea, I'm not sure what to expect. And I see myself constantly trying to use my Dutch reference frame. And that's something I really quickly had to let go of, because they have a different institutional history, they have a different mindset. What's been really helpful, though, is hearing from fellow Koreans saying that this is outrageous. So it's not that we come in here as, adoptees who know nothing about Korea, and we're just trying to use our Western standards for Korean society. No, Korean society, the Korean media, the Korean supporters, the Korean archivists, they all say, you're not crazy here. They're trying to gaslight you, saying that you are ungrateful, that you do not understand Korea. No, they're not abiding by their own laws. They're not abiding by their own service standards.
I even had an attorney, I said, am I overreacting? And they told me you're probably underreacting. And so I think that's what kind of solidified it for me. I see another question here. This one is really good, from Bimahe on Instagram. So do we need to contact the NCRC and the adoption agency to request adoption records? Everything as of July 16th is now under the responsibility of NCRC. You can still try to contact the adoption agency, but they really have been pretty consistent about saying, no, we are transferring the records to NCRC. Many of them stopped responding to records requests long before even this transfer process started. But I will make the distinction between the Korean adoption agency, the sending adoption agency, and the receiving adoption agency. So in your adoptive country, I do still recommend that if they are still in operation, that you contact them and you request your records, at least what they have available in your receiving country. They may tell you that they're not able to obtain the Korean records during this 3-month pause, but you should still be able to hopefully request information in your receiving country from your receiving country adoption agency.
Yeah. And there are some other frequently asked questions we have received, and also some question I think from the morning session we received that are kind of on point. So, how will the NCRC manage all the adoptees putting in requests to see their file? What do you think, Mary?
So based on what we've seen about with their scanning equipment, with their office space, in Korea currently or previously to now, there have been 4 different adoption agencies with their offices with varying
Multiple rooms, yeah.
varying numbers of consultation rooms. There is a single consultation room that is at the temporary storage facility. It has a direct view straight into the parking garage, so there are some privacy issues as well. And we also have some questions about the ability to have video streaming or conversations with somebody who might be able to help you translate, because we do realize like not everybody speaks Korean, and in lots of cases adoptees went to countries where English is not even primary or secondary language. So it's not ideal. I think the situation is far from adequate. And then, of course, if an adoptee is not physically able to access the site because of a disability, we have been told by NCRC that they would be willing to send scanned copies of those records to the adoptee. However, the law requires that everybody has equal access, and that we should always be able to see the original records if we request it.
So yeah, they are not abiding by their own law even. And I think what also has to be said that in terms of actual having the personnel to provide those services, the NCRC itself has said before that the bare minimum needed to effectively post adoption services is 25, a team of 25 people. And then again, that's the bare minimum. They have requested an increase for their post-adoption services with exactly 0 personnel. So they will not have the adequate number of staff on site in their team to be able to help everyone or to scan enough in time to provide the files in time for everyone. So it's been frustrating to hear that, but again, it's not something we cannot act upon, and not something we can try to hold them accountable on. So we will continue to push them to increase the number of staff available to provide services.
Just for the sake of time and clarity, we are going to start combining some of the questions because some of them are related to each other. So this next question coming in from Michelle, however, it was considered for the adoption files to be scanned. So what the digitization project, and was that considered? Yes, it was considered. Unfortunately, there were issues and some mismanagement with that project as well. So
I think we need to separate the two things out here. So the NCRC actually has had a digitization project specifically of records that were held by the orphanages. And because that they have been doing that for 10 years, it was actually started by KST, and then the NCRC took that over. And that 10-year project turned out to be full of corruption and a lot of management problems that led to hard drives being lost, data wrongly put into the system, empty pages being scanned, and not getting actually the original records from the orphanages. So the original records, some of them, they are probably able to trace them back, but as of now, the NCRC does not know where the original records are. The information that they put into their own system is wrong, and their they've lost some hard drives with scans that they've made. So that was a mess. So when they started talking about transferring all the records of the adoption agencies, they did not start with digitization because they were under investigation,
and still are.
and they still are.
So another
problems.
question we frequently receive is to what extent are we involved with DKRG and their case in the digitization project? And so, as Bastiaan was mentioned, that was something that started quite a while ago, and so they have filed claims, and their claims are moving forward to take NCRC into investigations. And so these are really two separate issues, but we do see that there is a pattern of systemic mismanagement throughout NCRC. So that's kind of where we make that split, that distinction between the organizations and our body of work. But I think there's the common thread of, NCRC oversight and
what must be recognized is that we're also supported by a lot of local Korean volunteers, and one very honorable mention is I think Jomino. Jomino is the leader of Orphan Solidarity Forum, and he was supposed to be adopted to the United States himself. So he was in a feeder orphanage for Holt. So he always talks about how he saw all his friends disappear, but he resisted. So he stayed in Korea. He's been very supportive for helping us out, trying to maneuver through the landscape in Korea. And yeah, we're definitely working and cooperating together in holding government accountable. And he is also the one who supported the filing of the charges at the police, trying to hold the NCRC accountable through that measure.
It looks like we have another kind of frequently asked question that we hear in our email inbox, and we've also had on some of the Q&A sessions before, is EARS involved in TRC? The answer is there's a little bit of nuance to that. So for those of you who might be new to this conversation, the TRC is the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. That is a government body in Korea who has been investigating systemic abuses, human rights abuses in the adoption system in Korea for the last couple of years.
Yeah, since 2022.
Since 2022. Yeah. And so they recently released their initial report that confirmed that, yes, there were, sorry.
It's okay. Take it back.
So there were abuses in the process. Some of us do have TRC claims as EARS committee members. So yes, there is some effect there, as you can obviously see. And so we do take that work very seriously. And you never know what's going to trigger you or when. But the reason that we are advocating so fiercely for the preservation of these records now is that even though many of those cases were resolved, there are still many that have not been resolved, and they are still waiting for answers. And there are still adoptees who are hoping to file claims. But without record evidence, it is really difficult for those claims to move forward or even have the hope of moving forward in the future. And so, that's kind of my nuanced, very human answer there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot to be confronted with such a core part of your own personal history that's suddenly being called, a human rights violation. And I think we have to acknowledge that, yes, we all have our different hardships and our different ways and moments in our own life when we recognize that. In my case, I'm not adopted myself, but both of my parents, they submitted their case to the TRC, and I had to make the phone call to my father saying, hey, you you were recognized as a victim of your life started with your human rights being violated. And then unfortunately, I had to call my mother after saying that unfortunately, your case was not accepted this time. So, yes, like Mary explained, it's intimately tied to the record storage issue and the broader issue of how we try to address the rights of Korean adoptees in Korea. Um, I think on different levels, we're involved in different spheres. EARS right now is mostly focused on the records and trying to hold the NCRC accountable, but in personal roles we're also involved in different processes as well.
Mhm. But I do think it does give kind of a different motivation to the advocacy and scope of work of what EARS is undertaking. It's knowing exactly how significant those impacts can be.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we have like different layers of how we've participated in different forms over the years. uh, I mean, like you said, you just moved to Korea 5 years to find your birth family, and you kind of just stumbled in and fell down in
the
it.
rabbit hole.
Jelaine Lee, for example, is part of our team. She's like what you would call an old school activist. She was part of Ask, who back in 2004 already tried to push for a stop on international adoption and a recognition that international adoption violates certain rights. So she's one of the OG who has pushed narrative since then, coming in and out of the space.
I think one of the discussions that we had a little bit earlier with the earlier session that we had with primarily the U.S. adoptees today was, well, if I don't want to file a TRC claim, I don't want to do birth search, why would I even need my records at all? And that's because they're identity confirming documents. And so depending on what life phase you are, you might need those documents, and you might need them urgently because they confirm things like identity, citizenship. If you want to live and work in a country, can you get a visa? Are you authorized to work in that country? If you do anything in finance, the international field, government, those typically require background checks, and they will ask for your adoption paperwork. And then also we've been told from some of the Australian and American adoptees, and perhaps some of the Europeans have been affected by this too, but if you need to apply for social benefits, so things like education, medical care, even retirement, you will sometimes be asked to produce copies of your adoption records. Usually, if you are in the position to be looking at a job offer, or you're getting ready to retire and leave your career, you do need those documents rather urgently. I think the most serious of those situations is if somebody is in a medical crisis and they need to find out if they do have anything related to their biological family in order to treat what's likely a genetic disease. And there have been some adoptees who unfortunately have not been able to obtain their records in time. So we do recommend, as soon as you are able to request your documents, that you obtain them. Even if you never want to look at them, it is better to have them and not need them than to need them and not have them.
Yeah, and I think something that one of our other co-founders, Omyo Kim, has pointed out as well is that, yes, those documents are part of maybe for yourself a traumatic history, but like Maria just explained, they're also simple administrative documents that we sometimes need to simply prove something, and we shouldn't have to go through a ritual of performative trauma to get access to something so mundane, actually, so important for just day-to-day processes.
Right.
And the fact that we have to fight for them, the fact that we have to perform in a particular way to get access to them, that by itself is a violation of our human rights. Um,
And it's multi-generational too.
yeah.
So even if you as yourself, as the adoptee, don't need to have these documents because you don't need the work visa or you don't plan to use those benefits, and thank goodness you don't have a medical crisis, we do need to think about the next generations that are affected as well because their identities are tied to ours.
Yeah, so for a lot of descendants of Korean adoptees as well, those documents are very important because we don't have any right now to request any of those documents because we were not the adoptees themselves. So legally, we are actually per the law we have zero access to those documents. But if we want to request, for example, the Korean diaspora visa, if we want to do anything in Korea and we have to prove something, but also abroad, in our own countries of birth, sometimes we do still have to prove something about our heritage and the background for whatever legal purposes or identification purposes. Um, we cannot request those documents, and that means that our parents need to have them either on hand or have the ability to request those documents for us. And right now, that is being compromised by the lack of management, the lack of respect that the NCRC and the Ministry of Health and Welfare have for this transfer process that we see right now.
So going back to one of the earlier questions in the chat, it was, I think from Michelle had asked, what do you want from the NCRC and Ministry of Health and Welfare, the Korean government in general? And I think that goes back into this discussion of long-term preservation, a long-term home for these documents, but not just for the documents, but recognition and status as cultural national heritage, because that's, I think, what changes the societal view. These are not just things that concern adoptees. This is part of Korean history, Korean culture. And when you give the documents the respect and treatment that they deserve, by extension, that means the people who are represented in those documents hopefully have the same, receive the same level of respect. And then also, I think in order to prevent some of these harms and traumas that so many of us experience, even if they're microaggressions, to prevent that from happening in the future, we do need to preserve our history, our collective history.
Yeah, and that's also part of Korea's own history, and Korean society should become more aware of that as well. Very good point in the comment section. Um, I think those are most of the questions.
I think we also, though, I know this can be all very distressing news, and obviously I had my moment, but we don't want to leave you guys without hope. The other question we get very frequently is, what can I do about it, right? And so there are several ways that people can get involved and take action.
Yeah, so upcoming on the 26th, on Tuesday, there is there's an in-person, but it's hybrid, so it will also be hosted online, a forum in the National Assembly, hosted by lawyers, pro bono lawyers who have been supporting adoptees for a few decades now, throughout the years, in helping us achieve legislative change and get our rights be acknowledged where it matters most. And they will try to explain a little to adoptees how currently the law works in Korea, what legislative changes would be needed in Korea to get more of our rights recognized. So if you want to hear a little bit more about the actual policy perspective and what kind of follow-ups as a community we should try to support and strive for, if you want to contribute and give your own opinion on the direction of that, please join in on the 26th. The poster and the link are on our Instagram and on our bio.
which is at Ears on NCRC. If you
Yeah.
are not already following on
It's in
Instagram.
I think it's in the description of the live stream as well.
Yeah, exactly. Check
So
out
please give
comments
us a follow
below.
there. And yeah, please show up on the 26th at the forum as well. And then there's also something more directly that everyone is able to do right now, which is, um, again, if you go to Instagram, there is a post, a call to action post. Um, the more people start publicly posting questions where it's for everyone visible that we are raising questions to the NCRC, the better. So please start commenting on the public profiles of the NCRC on the Instagram or the Facebook, and start putting your questions there, because there, in the end, there's only so much that we can answer. We also have a lot of questions for them that we do not get the answer to. So yeah, please put your questions there, because that also puts pressure on them to actually try to get that mindset going of, hey, this is actually a population that we do need to service, instead of a population that is an annoyance to them and that they only have to manage.
And there are other ways. If you want to be directly involved with ears, we are currently looking for a lot of help in terms of website development and programming, maybe a little bit of graphic design as well. And also the
Video editors.
And the biggest area I think where we can always use help is in translation. So
Yes.
if you are multilingual or even bilingual with Korean and any other language where we have adoptees, which is a wide amount of countries, we can always use your help. You can find information on how to support ears. You can find a volunteer form on our website at earsoncrc.org. You can find the direct link to that volunteer form in the comments in the chat.
Yes, and also in the description of the live stream. And I just want to say that one of the things that we always need is people on the ground here in Korea. So whenever you're visiting in Korea, please do not hesitate to contact us and ask if you have any actions going on, if you have any more press conferences or forums, or if you're having another protest, or we are always welcoming to invite as many adoptees as the event is able to accommodate. And we've basically always come short because of a lot of adoptees who are permanently in Korea. We have full-time jobs. This has kind of eaten up everything in our lives right now, but we're all so busy, and I think everyone's busy. So when you are in Korea, please reach out, because in the end, the more people who are able to show up in numbers, the more the NCRC and the Ministry of Health and Welfare also starts to recognize that we are actual people with different faces and different backgrounds, and also different languages.
But also, speaking of that, if protesting is not your style, if you are in Korea, you can also help us with our well-being and mental health. Sometimes this work can be really all-consuming. So sometimes it's nice to just get the call and say, hey, do you want to go for a cup of coffee?
Oh yeah, I'm always down for a cup of coffee, or
coffee, chicken,
some
beer,
K-barbecue,
something like that. We appreciate all of that as well. And speaking of mental health and well-being, also on our website, we do have a mental health guide. We know we've covered a lot of ground. And sometimes it can be a lot.
It's a lot of information. And we're talking about something that, of course, touches upon very sensitive issues for everyone. That's also why we always want to highlight the importance of taking care of your own mental health. The link to the guide was currently, I think it's also posted now in the comment section. You can also find it linked again on our Instagram, in our bio, and on our website. It should be released to find. It's not a very extensive guide, but we hope it provides enough handles for everyone to start reaching out locally for the support they need. Please, always prioritize your own mental health.
And look out for each other too.
Yes.
So the adoptees in your circle, in your community, always look out for each other.
Yeah, and I think we always have to remember that we're all at different stages of the adoption journey. I'd like to say not everyone is on that same level of being able to handle so much information.
Yes.
Korea, in the end, is a lot for adoptees, and let alone if we start talking about policy and law and accountability and protests. So be mindful of each other, take care of each other, and
Thank you for being
thank you
part
for
of
being
our
here.
community.
And,
We really appreciate you taking the time from your busy lives. We know that you all have jobs and families and life stuff to do too. So we
Yes.
really appreciate you taking the time to be here today.
Yeah, thank you guys for tuning in and for your good questions.
We do plan to have more of these live streams in the future. So if you did not get a chance to ask a question today, if you need to think before you come up with your next question, we do plan to hold these on a regular basis in the future. So
Thank you guys so much for joining in, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye,
bye
everyone.
guys.